As a background, this is what we're spending on medicines each year. 2.4 billion roughly. And about 85% of that is expenditure in the community, and that's where you see the graph here at just over 2 billion euro. You'll notice that from 1999 to 2009, we saw a double-digit increase in the expenditure in medicines each year. That was amongst the highest in Europe. And that meant as clinicians, we were prescribing more medicines and we were prescribing more expensive medicines.
We have a total budget for healthcare, that what are we willing to spend on all healthcare, long-term care, acute care, and medications. Actually, the aim is that total healthcare spend does not grow faster than our gross national product, which is a significant challenge, has been, but for the last couple of years we've managed to do so. But we've done this also at a cost. We saved money in nursing homes, we saved money in nursing salaries, we saved money in hospitals, and we allowed actually a lot of room for new medication and new technology to enter the market. And this cannot go on unlimited.
First up, controversial, spending more money on medicines isn't going to solve the problem. If we increase the budget for drugs in Ireland or the UK or any other European country, the pharmaceutical industry hold monopolies and they will respond by putting the prices of their drugs up further. It's really basic economics. We cannot throw money at this problem. You know, regardless of the size of the health budget, you're going to have challenges around getting it. So we really need to think more deeply about what the solutions are to this, beyond just demanding more money be spent on medicines.
Medicines are not developed in a vacuum. They're the result of collaborative efforts. It was mentioned already throughout the day before. There's a lot of public funding going to research and development. There's academics who spend time on innovative approaches, early research. There's tax breaks, there's grants, there's monopolies, position, etc., which are granted by society. There's patients who are involved in trials, there's doctors who spend time on clinical trials. So we need to take that into the equation as well when we're negotiating prices to really know who takes what kind of risks, who spends what on research and development.
I just think that when you look at the prices of new cancer drugs, you have to understand that these drugs are not available to everyone. So implicit in a high price like this is a high degree of inequality.
I think it's vitally important that patients and service users are part of any discussion around the development of health policy. One of the things that also strikes me is in relationship to the vulnerability of individuals from an ethics point of view. We all know from research that patients are a vulnerable group, that are being exposed to the whims and the wills of healthcare providers within the system, but also in terms of pharmaceutical companies as well.
There's little transparency for patients or representatives in the reimbursement process, as I mentioned, and patients are made to feel burdensome on the state because of the high drug prices. And at the moment as well, I feel like we need a more unified evidence-based patient representation. It shouldn't be up to individual patients to have to go out into the media and almost sell their story. Professor Barry spoke about minimal value, and again, value is a very emotive subject for patients. And perhaps one suggestion I would make is that we make it compulsory as part of the initial trial process for the pharmaceutical companies to identify much better biomarkers, so we know that the drugs are going to the people that they will work for.
I have a great support system at home, and I have lots of things that have put me into a position that I actually can make change, and I'm empowered to do so. But there are a lot of people who are not in that position, who are afraid to have their voices heard, who are not really sure what to say, and they stop themselves because of that. And those people also need to be taken care of. And you know, I'm always really, really conscious that anything that I do, I try and leave it better for the next person that comes along. So if I face a difficulty, I try and fix that so the next person won't have that same problem, because I shouldn't have encountered it, and I would have appreciated it if somebody had fixed it along the way for me.
The power of patient advocates. I think the work that Access to Medicines does, and all of the other advocacy groups who work with lots of groups of patients who are inclusive of the hepatitis C advocacy groups, do amazing work. And you know, I in the role that I'm in now, for example, right back into the front of you know, dealing with patients who are really kind of suffering at the hands of the health system. So I suppose I can't overemphasise the power of those patient advocates in all of the work that we do. So happy to take.
This idea that the system we've got at the moment is the only way of doing business, it can never change, is not acceptable, and it's not based on reality. Baz's team have done an amazing job of coming up with a whole raft of policy alternatives that we could be implementing. The WHO has done the same thing. The Lancet have done the same thing. We've done a report with the economist Mariana Mazzucato. She's an innovation economist. You know, we are not short of effective alternatives, and we've seen them work in other areas. And there is a willing and a willful effort by the industry and by others to shut down the idea that there are other ways of doing business. Patents are one means of incentivising innovation. There are many more others, and they don't need to involve rationing of medicines or denial of patients access to treatments that could keep them alive.
Well, there's compulsory licenses. The moment a drug goes off patent, you move this moment earlier in time. That's what you do. So it's not something that is not possible. It's possible because it happens all the time. Medication goes off patent, and then generic producers start making this medication. So the only thing you do is you push this moment forward, back in time. Then there is encouragement of pharmacy preparations. Pharmacists, probably also here in Ireland, they're trained to prepare medication. That's somewhat of a lost trade, but actually many of the medications we were having discussions about, like Orkambi, like Spinraza, they're not that complicated. It's actually not a very complicated medication. It's doable for well-equipped pharmacists to actually prepare this medication themselves, and there is a legal possibility to do so because the pharmacist has the right to prepare medication, even though it's under a patent, if he does that for his own patients.
And the one message I want to say, and I want to agree with the previous speakers on this, is that I think you have to put the compulsory licensing of patents on the table when you negotiate prices. You can't just assume that you have no choice but to deny the patient coverage if there's a dispute in the prices between the government and the company. Instead of using the patient's coverage as the hostage in the negotiation, I think you should put the patent monopoly as the hostage of the negotiation. So if the parties can't come to an agreement, the government should break the monopoly on the grounds that it's an abuse of the patent monopoly due to an excessive price. I don't think the patients should continue to bear the brunt of failures in a bad business model.
There is a very clear opportunity happening next month at the World Health Assembly in May. The World Health Assembly is the General Assembly of the World Health Organization. So it's basically where all the member states meet and discuss different resolutions, proposals, how to move forward in different domains. Italy has proposed an international agreement on transparency, on prices of medicines, on cost of research and development, as well as on clinical trials. In clinical trials, I did not touch upon so much today. I wanted to focus really on the prices and the cost of research and development. On clinical trials, it's more about the effectiveness, to make sure that all the data is really being published on clinical trials, also the one that may show that the medicine may not be so effective. But so this international agreement would provide more transparency on the prices that countries pay to share information, give a role to the World Health Organization to facilitate this, and also force pharmaceutical companies to be more transparent about their cost of research and development.
I would put to all of you that value and power, to the extent that we can influence them, are through the public policies that our parties develop and through the public policies that our government implement. That is the modern version of how we exert power. In the old days, we had traditional institutions, whether it was churches or other societies, but nowadays, if we want to be, I would put you, a republic who's controlled by us, it's through public policy and the implementation of public policy that we can do that. So I really hope, like Kieran in his talk, that this conference has an impact on public policy implementation, because that's, I think, how it will make a difference.
The fact that what has been echoed all through today, especially when Dimitri had talked about the fact that transparency is definitely the enabler of lower drug prices and access to all. In order for us to achieve this, I have finally come to the end of my journey today. That in order for us to achieve this and find our way through this big abyss that is looming over everyone, developing country, middle income country, our income country, that in order for everybody to have access to this medicine, we need to strengthen the negotiating power that we have as people.
The reason why I joined the Access to Medicines movement is because a few years ago, I met Brian Sensileri from Uganda. And I was on my 5th option of HIV medication. And when I met Brian, he told me about how all his family died of AIDS because they didn't have access to medicines. And in Uganda, you only have access to 2 lines of treatment. The only reason why I was alive is because of the country I was born in. And Jamie Love asked a very good question earlier on. He's like, should we be comfortable that 80% of the world has access to substandard treatment? Well, my answer to that was no. When you meet people like Brian, they open up your eyes to the issues, but also the solutions to access to medicines. And once they're open, you can't really close them. Brian inspired me to help co-found Access to Medicines with Kira and Kieran. And I hope your eyes are opened after hearing all these amazing speakers today, and you want to take action, because you don't want to close your eyes to when you leave out here. So please join us. We're an open group. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are, what you work as, we want your help.
And I would like to conclude with some specific recommendations to the Irish Government. I would like to call upon the Irish Government to support the Italian resolution for transparency at the World Health Assembly next month. We would like the Government to ensure that conditions are attached to public investment in research and development to ensure that public health gain is an outcome, because governments already invest heavily in drugs research with limited return in terms of public health gain. We would call upon the Government to support intergovernmental collaboration initiatives such as Benelux, as it is evident that cooperation between governments is essential to successfully negotiate with global pharma and to introduce reform. We must not be afraid to explore the use of TRIPS flexibilities such as compulsory licensing, which are there to protect public health against unreasonably high prices. Finally, governments need to direct monies so that they can commission drugs for the future, rather than be reliant on the private sector and the free market to produce drugs. To summarise, we call upon the Irish Government to introduce and support the necessary reforms to ensure that we are not holding even more desperate conversations in 10 years' time. Thank you.